What is up, Team Take Profits? How's it going, guys? This is Chris Nord. I did say that I was going to make a video on the EJ. For those of you that are new, that's the European Euro and the Japanese Yen, and we call it EJ for short. So basically, it's on a downtrend, and then we had over the last couple days, we had a really big uptrend, and I think that caught a lot of people by surprise. So I kind of want to share my thoughts on why it happened and what it's going to do next, and also what we can do in the future to try to avoid losing money or getting stopped out in situations like this. So basically what happened was somewhere over in here on this rising trend, Linder basically said that the EJ was going to, he predicted it was going to fall, and it was going to fall. He predicted somewhere in the range of 115 even on that number, which would be several thousand pips for everybody. And so a lot of people waited and got in up here close to the top, 133.80, anywhere down in here, 133.30, any of these places, a lot of people bought in. And so we wrote it down, and it was really great. Linder was right. We're moving in the right direction. And we come all the way down. Huge drop. Several pips later, we ended at right around in 130, 140. Looks like as far as it got down there. And basically what we did then was we tried to figure out, hey, where we want to move our stop loss, and several of us set it, I think, right in here at 132.40, somewhere in this range. And basically that next morning, that overnight, the market turned and the trade went back into a buy, and it came all the way back up. And as you can see right here was 132.46. That was the stop loss that got everybody, or it was the point that got a lot of us out of that trade. And so I'm going to show you why we could have predicted that a little bit, and then I'm also going to show you this next one here, why we could have predicted this one as well. But anyway, several of us got back in right here, right around 132, because we knew, hey, it's still supposed to sell. So we came down, we wrote it, and I'm going to tell you why right here. Several of us, even down here where it all the way down to 131.25, we could have gotten out, and it was very obvious, seeing it now, and it's something that we should be able to see in the future after I'm done explaining. But we should have been able to get out, take our profit, and wait for this retracement all the way back up here. We don't recommend trading on the opposite direction of the trend. You can, if you wish to. That would have been a very large move, and you could have made a lot of pips, and it would have done well for you there, but we don't recommend doing that. And especially over the last several of these were over the holiday weekend, which can be very volatile. So, but anyway, I will explain all of that. So this is the 4-hour chart. What I did initially, because Lindor started talking to us over here, so I started to kind of draw out my trend lines. So as and not all of these are going to be drawn in the correct order that I actually drew them as they were happening, but obviously we started to see a trend line forming right here, and you could follow this thing down pretty consistently. I'm going to do that just somewhere in there, and they're not perfect trend lines, but that's kind of what happened. And we can follow that all the way down. Even further, we can carry that same trend line down to right here on the second uptrend. And the other thing that we can do is go back out to a daily chart. And so this was where I think I missed it. And I was watching, I actually I'm going to go to the weekly chart real quick. And what I did was I actually took and did several. Let me just get this set here. I actually did several of these kind of things. Like you can see, here's a pretty decent support and resistance line. And again, I'm not putting them exactly where they go 100%. I'm just doing this kind of quick. There's another one somewhere right in here. And this one is kind of important. Yeah, if I can get it to move. Right in here, you can see it. And on the left side of the screen, it bounces as both a floor and a ceiling. And also where we are currently at, I'm going to zoom in here, it acts as a little bit of a floor where we are at currently. So let's go back to the daily chart, zoom back out. One of the things that you can see is, and this was one that I kind of was keeping track of it, but I didn't actually ever draw it. And I think had I drawn it, I would have been able to read these couple of spots where we got out. So I'm actually going to draw, that's a straight line. I want that. I'm going to do it right here, and we're going to carry it. Well, let's try to get this going here. We'll take it all the way out. We'll follow this lower trend line, and guys, this is going to be, I did have this drawn. I said I didn't, but I do remember having this one drawn. And it's just looking at the patterns too of what has happened. I'm going to get back to the 4-hour chart because it's a little bit easier to see on here. And so basically that first one, we should have seen it. I'm going to point back down to it right here. We should have saw this where that trend line hits. It came down to that trend line. It tested it once, twice, and it looks like a little bit on that third time it tested it before it shot up. And so we should have known, hey, that's hitting, it looks like a couple different, you got your straight across support and resistance line, and then you also have this trend line that's carrying through from the daily chart. And so you can kind of see where it bounced. And so we should have said, hey, this is going to do one of two things. It's going to break through both of these, and it's going to continue to go down, or it's going to hit and it's going to go back up. And it definitely hit and went back up, and we should have monitored that closer. We should have maybe even pulled out and waited for it to do one or the other, because even if it breaks through, and if you get out here and it breaks through, there's going to be retracements. There's going to be pullbacks where you can get back in and keep going. And so several of us, I had $20 at this point right here, and I was debating on getting out, and I didn't. And so we held back in, and it just slowly went back up. And overnight, that one, I think I ended, my stop loss gave me $7. Not a complete loss, but we could have doubled our money on that trade. So we all get back in here, same thing, comes down, hits again, and there's actually a couple of different, I'm going to take that off for a second and get over here. There was actually a couple of different support lines that I had drawn, but this one again, it came back down. It followed this trend line. It was bouncing off this trend line, coming down, bouncing, and at some point, you see this little triangle that it forms, something's going to happen, and obviously it's going to either continue to go down or it's going to go back up. And so here's where another trend line that I'm going to draw shows, hey, it looks like it's probably going to go back up, because it was hitting this trend line. It broke down and it didn't look like it held. Let me go back to the daily chart, and here's where we can kind of, and it's always good to draw these trend lines. There's actually two here that I'm going to draw. One of them is a lower trend line, and it starts over in this direction, this area, and it actually bounces. Let me see if I can get this one better up here. Right about there, it looks like. So there's that trend line, but then there's another trend line that is not as noticeable, visible. You may not want to call it a trend line, but it's these peaks. There's several of these peaks. There's one there. That's not really a trend line. That's probably more support and resistance. But then there's another one kind of here that you could follow. So it's okay to mark up your chart. And you can see in the past, what did it do? Over the last several days, we're looking back all the way back over here on the left side of your, let me get over there, left side of your screen. So you have this really big uptrend, and that's the 9th of September. It comes up, comes back down, hits a support line. It hits this up here, comes back down, hits a support line, works its way through, comes up, hits a little bit of that support line, comes down. And I mean, it pretty much, it does the same thing almost twice in a row, and then it hits up here and comes back down. So you've almost got this pattern forming. And so we kind of should have observed it and said, hey, it's getting back to this trend line. This trend line is kind of a problem area, and it's also being met with a support and resistance. So we really need to watch this point right in here along with this. This was on the hourly or 4-hour chart. This was where we were currently at in our trade, and we were watching it drop. We had, that was where this pullback happened, the first one, and now we're back down here again. And you guys see how many points of intersection are happening right here? I mean, you got one trend line, two trend lines, and a support and resistance line. Something is going to happen here, and it's either going to continue dropping. Yes, that's awesome for us, or it's going to pull back and do a resistance. Again, I think what we should have done, or what I should have done, I'm not telling you guys what to do. This is all my observations. I'm going to go back to the 4-hour chart here. What I should have done, because again, I got in somewhere up in here, and I rode this second trend. I rode this down again a second time, and I was at $8 profit right here at the bottom, of this point. And I watched it, and I said, you know what, it's pulling back a little bit, and I should have got out. I should have got out somewhere right in here, because it could have been down here, and there could have been just a little bit of bobble with some pullbacks. So you don't want to jump out immediately, but somewhere in here I should have got out. Should have been like 131, somewhere in there we should have got out. And I think I ended up hitting my stop loss somewhere in here, wherever I was in take profit, and this was at $8, and I rode it all the way back to I think $1.40. So guys, I just left, I don't even know what percentage of my account. It was probably like a 12% loss if I would have just closed out this trade. If I would have closed out right here, waited for a pullback, and came back up here. And now why are we needing to watch it up here? Well, let's take a look at that. That's another question. We got this trend line sitting right up here, guys. So we're watching this. It does have a little bit of a pullback on it, and it may shift back down, but it may not either. I don't know that it will. I'm actually expecting it to follow the pattern that it's been following on this trend line, and it's parallel to these other two trend lines. They're working in conjunction. They are going down. All three of them are kind of taking that same pattern of downward movement. But it looks like this could potentially come all the way back up to this trend line and hit some resistance and then fall again. So look for another one of these kind of patterns here, or if you want, let's move it over. Look, it comes at this, hits this trend line up here, and it falls, and it hits this second one. It reminds me kind of, you see these green lines? I'm forgetting the name of this right now, but it's kind of, these trend lines kind of remind me of the green lines, and I don't know why I'm spacing the name of this chart, the graph of the green lines, but you know how it spaces, and sometimes you see stuff bouncing off the top, and here top of the green line, here it hits, goes down somewhere in the middle. Sometimes it bounces between the top of the green and goes all the way down to the bottom. So you got these 3 trend lines, and so sometimes it goes all the way from the top trend line to the bottom. Sometimes it goes to the middle one, back down, So play around in this area, and you can see it's a pullback of it even more. So I'm going to end this video here a little bit. So I would expect for this to jump back up and then fall down. And I'm going to wait for it to come up here in this range. Unless it starts to drop again, then I think, hey, for some reason it stopped. Well, and here we can see why it may stop and turn. Here, if you look, I'm going to draw this right now. Support and resistance line. Oh, that didn't do it. I got that on. Let me turn that off and do that. There you go. So you can see, if I can grab it and move it. There we go. It's too high. Too low. I got fat fingers, guys. Sorry. Anyway, slightly above where it's at. I'm going to show you this right up here. You see that? There's several touches on this line right here at 133.17. Get closer, 133.12. So we just passed that a little bit, so there could be a zone there that it's bouncing. Looks like over here it was used again, this little zone area, resistance space. So it could very well, we'll zoom back in and come over to where it's at right now. So we very well could see right over here, it could drop, but I expect it to shoot back up to that top trend line, and I'm going to buy in somewhere there, or sell in. I'm going to take a sell trade, and I'm going to have fun riding it back down. And this time, next time I see it do something like this or this, I'm going to be ready to pull out of the trade and let the retracement happen, and then jump back in and ride it. Guys, that's what it's all about. Just learning the market, learning where we can see these trends. Here's the hourly view. It's kind of hard to see. Draw your charts up. That's what this is for. That's what these graphs and lines are for, so you can get a nice picture of what the market's doing. And that's what's going to save us and help us to see these patterns, help us to see the trend lines and the support and resistance lines, and especially, guys, right where they intersect. That's big movement play. Something's going to happen. And that's where I feel like I learned to watch for this kind of stuff, to see, hey, I'd rather get out of this trade, take my profit, and wait for it to do whatever it's going to do at this critical point, and then jump back in. Had I gotten out here and it continued to fall, I'd been like, okay, let me plot a couple more resistance lines. Let me maybe carry this trend line down even further, and then let me see a pullback, and then I could buy back in and continue to write it down. I was told at some point that, you got broker fees that get added on every time you take a trade, and I get that, but I'd rather take $20 and then pay a smaller broker fee to jump back in here and write it back down and take my full profit on the stuff that I get. So that's where I'm going to end it. We're killing it, guys. Team Take Profit. I just got started in the web analyzer a little bit. I've not done a whole lot. Looking forward to playing around with that more on my demo account and getting really efficient at that. But I do think that the euro, Japanese yen can continue to fall, and I'm just ready to continue to make money with you guys. Talk to you later.